states. It was not brought on with such a claim by everyone that there wasn't universal consent and agreement that this was a great document. You know, they wanted to make many changes, and of course the argument becomes, do we make changes before we enact it, or do we allow it to become law? Because once we allow it to become law, we're never going to make any changes. So in the state ratifying conventions, before it became law, many of the states requested or demanded that the Constitution have certain amendments made to it. Now today, 225 years later, all of the books that you'll read and the scholars will concentrate on the warm and fuzzy story about the Bill of Rights and how the Founding Fathers were interested in guaranteeing our rights to bear arms, not have people quartered in our homes, and to speak for speech and religion and things like that. And that, while that makes good copy and good story, it is similar to the way that we have objectified people like Thomas Jefferson. Because the practical reality is, it ain't the truth. During the ratifying conventions, just like during the summer of 1787, the hottest debate wasn't over speech and religion, wasn't over a Bill of Rights. In fact, 3 members that were present and stayed till the end refused to sign the Constitution. George Mason of Virginia, Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, and George Mason of Virginia, and then Randolph of Virginia as well. And their primary reasons, while Mason is attributed largely because it didn't contain a Bill of Rights, because he wrote the Virginia Bill of Rights, which was largely what the amendments were predicated upon, was because it didn't contain what he viewed as an adequate guarantee of the right of the people to have sufficient and adequate representation. Now, how do I know that? Well, because I was at Williams College. Other people have read things in books. What I'm telling you tonight, I'm not telling you anything I read out of a book if I didn't eyeball the actual document myself. Now, when I showed my research to Williams College, which is one of the oldest colleges, liberal arts colleges in the nation, they also happen to have one of the best collections of rare books and rare documents. They have George Washington's copy of the Federalist Papers, one of signed by George Washington, 2 volumes. They closed the museum to let me play with them and photograph them for my book. I must say, of all the things, that impressed me. They have one of George Washington's early printings of the laws of the first session of Congress. They have George Mason's copy of the September 12th in working progress print of the Constitution, where he wrote on the back in his own hand why he wasn't going to sign. So when I tell you George Mason didn't sign, primarily because it was about representation and not about the Bill of Rights, it's because he listed that before the Bill of Rights. And I saw it with my own eyes. And I brought things to show you tonight. When I tell you these things, there's nothing that I've left to chance. Back to representation. Article 1, Paragraph 1, 435 members of the House of Representatives. Well, that's because Congress, in the original version of the Constitution, was given discretion to fix the size of the House. Not that complicated, except the states didn't trust Congress. Basically, the argument in layman's terms was, wait a second. We just fought a revolution, and we are not going to give you guys the power to decide how powerful you are going to be. What do you think, we're stupid? To quote my brother again, if you're sitting at a poker table, and you're looking around, and you can't figure out who the sucker is, guess what? These people didn't have iPhones, but they were no dummies. Okay? They lived in a different time, but they were just as smart, if not smarter, than we are. You know, I wouldn't want to play Jeopardy with Thomas Jefferson, recognizing his flaws like everyone else. We all have flaws. But back to representation. So the state ratifying conventions demanded, there was a compromise essentially, and they recommended amendments, a whole host of amendments, like 124 of them. But 6 states demanded that there be a change